Hi, and welcome back to Tech Talk. I'm Ken Mingus, Executive Editor at Computer World. I'm here today with CSO's Steve Reagan, Network World's Brandon Butler, Macworld, PC World guru Mike Simon. We're going to be talking about everything from GPS spoofing to where the wearables market is dead, whether the iPhone is overpriced, and we're going to find out everything about intent-based networking. Stick around. All right, so I want to start off with wearables. What prompts this is we had a column in Computer World this week by Mike Elgin where he talked about smartwatches and basically said that the smartwatch market is dead because smartwatch manufacturers did not go to the enterprise first, that they rolled out smartwatches for the consumer market and that they should have done what Google has done with Google Glass, roll it out to a small little market of select people, learn what smartwatches could do, build in enterprise apps like, being able to get into your building with your smartwatch or exchange business card information between watches. And it caught my eye because I'm not sure that that's right because, and I wanted to see what you guys think about that because Mike's arguing that the smartwatch market is dead with my little, Apple
as your smartwatch
with
goes
my
off.
smartwatch. As seriously, it is. It's going off. I have messages. I don't think it's dead. I do think that it hasn't found a home yet. It hasn't arrived, if you will.
And
but
hindsight is 20/20, right? So
well,
it's
yeah.
like, well, we could have done it this way, and maybe it would be better. But.
Well, clearly, I think Apple is doing well with the Apple Watch.
Yeah, they don't report numbers, but Tim Cook said it was 50%. He said 50% growth. I'm assuming that's year over year, maybe quarter over quarter. Either way, for not a new product. That's significant.
It's now about to, they're now about to roll out their third version of the Apple Watch. This one supposedly with LTE, which I think will open the door to a lot more users.
So, clue the Apple newbie in here. If they roll out a new watch with LTE, aren't they just giving you a new phone?
In a sense, yeah.
So then what's the point?
The idea is to basically disconnect the watch from the phone.
Right.
You don't have to have the phone with you if you want to do Dick Tracy.
You can still get calls. You can still get notifications. You can still get updates from apps. Like right now, if you don't have your phone with you, you can do GPS. You can do small things.
Listen to some music while you're running.
If it's on your watch. If you have to put it on there first. There's not a ton you can do without the phone.
Okay.
LTE opens it up to everything. I mean, it still is not going to replace your phone, but it can act as a companion.
I was going to say, unless I was reading it wrong when it first came out, I thought that was the big key, was it's so tied to your phone. That was their selling point. So why get away? But that makes sense now. You can do a lot more.
It was a selling point because it's the only way it worked. They had to keep it, they had to connect it because your phone was the way to connect to the world.
But in terms of the rollout of the Apple Watch, I almost feel like it was really anticipated before it came out, and there were all these rumors that it was going to be coming out. And I feel like if they had done it to an enterprise market to begin with, I feel like that would have been a little bit of maybe a letdown in the market because so many people wanted to see what this watch was about. So I don't know if it would have really changed things if they had gone to the enterprise market before. And it's not like they were inhibiting the enterprise market from using it, right? So I don't know how much it really would have changed
I also kind of remember back in 2007, people saying Apple missed the boat by not having the iPhone rolled out to the enterprise market as well.
Yeah.
They completely ignored BlackBerry at the time, and it was strictly consumer advice, very expensive. That did all right.
It did just fine, I think.
I
wondered, Steve, you had mentioned something earlier that had Apple tried to roll out the Apple Watch for the enterprise or for companies first, that might not have been a good idea for security reasons? Or?
So you two might not know, but long before I got into journalism, what I did was security in their enterprise market. So if Apple would have rolled out a device like that, when I was managing a network, I would have had serious, really bad hangups on that. First of all, like you just mentioned passively. And I get why it's a cool factor, but one of the things you brought up is actually a very valid security risk. You say you can use your phone to unlock that door.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens if I get your phone? What happens if I get your watch?
Well, if it comes off my wrist, you have to be able to log in again. You can't do anything with it.
What happens if I just tailgate you?
Right.
Well, that's possible.
What
Or you
happens
could
if
cut my arm off and just wave it at the, and
Not as dramatic. What I could do, though, is force you to open the door.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are very, like, in that case, do I allow that NFC lock, which that's near field communication, so it's going to let the watch open your door? Do I put that on sensitive like wire rooms? Do I put that just in standard offices? How?
Yeah,
I have to rethink the
I
whole
agree
strategy.
with that premise that enterprises maybe aren't going to be the first cutting edge use cases of a technology like this. They sort of want it to be tested out in the consumer market
You
to
need
see.
it needs to grow. It needs
Yeah.
to gradually.
Well, this is Apple we're talking
Yeah.
about too, which is not known for rolling out things for enterprise first. It is the
They
consumer
don't have
first.
to.
Right.
I mean, Apple never has to go to the enterprise because all of my enterprise users are Apple consumers. When it comes to like BYOD and you're bringing in your iPhones, your iPods, and iPads, and everything like this, the biggest indicator of what technologies I need to allow on my network and provide for resource-wise is what my employees are using. So if all three of you are part of my network team, and I only have provisions for PC, but now all three of you have Mac everywhere, I need to figure out a way to have you two work on my network. So I have to provision you somehow. And my biggest indicator of what comes first is what these people are using. So in a way, anybody who's trying to challenge Apple by saying they didn't come to the enterprise market first, you doomed to failure, shame, shame, shame. Well, it's crap, because they absolutely did, because every one of your enterprise,
We did come to we brought it ourselves, is what you're saying. People brought
every
in
one of
the
Apple's
watch.
consumers is an enterprise user. So yeah, they flooded the market with Apple devices. I mean, look at how transformative now the touch is. So you can unlock your phone with your fingerprint, right?
Right.
Okay, so security people have been trying to get biometrics as a standard, as something we're used to and you should use more for a long time. Apple does it with one phone. And in 1 year, that's what everybody wants, to secure their devices and access all their things. It took Apple 1 year to do what the security industry couldn't do in 5. So that is a huge step.
It makes me wonder if the iPhone 8, and we'll get to the pricing thing in a minute, but if the iPhone 8 comes out with facial recognition, whether we'll all be doing facial recognition within a year.
It's not outside of the realm of possibility. I mean, there's got to be something better than what we have now, and I firmly believe in biometrics for certain situations. Not everything. But yeah, the reason it's mainstream and so many people know about it is because Apple does it.
I'm still hoping for the Minority Report eye scan. You know,
You can get that. Samsung has the iris scanning on their phones. I think the biggest problem with not to get off gear here, but the facial recognition right now is, I'll say garbage for lack of a better word.
To borrow Steve's word,
but
crap.
Yeah, there's a lot of security risks right now. You can spoof it with a picture, some of them.
Yeah.
So the fingerprint is safe, unique to you.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden we go away from that and everyone starts doing facial recognition, they better get it right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so I think we've decided that the smartwatch market is not dead. That Apple did not miss the boat.
Maybe we just need some better apps for them.
We might need some better apps. I think we do. Apple did not miss the boat by rolling it out for the enterprise first. Sorry, Mike. You know, I like the column. It was a good column.
It was a good
I think
story.
We're going to have
salacious
this is a
headline, too. I read
Florida zip, though. We disagree on this one. Okay, so let me turn to Brandon now. Professor Brandon, we call him, because you're going to teach us or tell us what intent-based networking is and why enterprises should care.
Yeah, so this has been a really big deal in the enterprise market and specifically the networking market over the last 3 months or so. So Cisco, biggest networking company in the world, made a big announcement at their Cisco Live conference this year that they want to pursue this intent-based networking strategy. So what does that mean? It basically is the idea of bringing machine learning to networking.
Okay.
And so it's the idea of all these network administrators out there that are controlling these networks. Instead of having to go in and manually provision their networks to do things, you're going to have a software platform that literally you tell the software platform, I want the network to do this. And the network is smart enough to actually go and do it. So people have equated this to like a self-driving car for the network.
Okay.
So imagine a car, now today you figure out where you're going to go and the directions, and maybe you plug your directions into your phone and then you're driving. Self-driving car, you get in, you plug in where you want to go, and it takes you there. That's basically the idea that we have with this intent-based networking. You tell the network what your intent is that you want from that network, and the network is smart enough to actually execute that intent. And so this has ramifications in the security world. You can say, I want these security policies to be enforced, and you don't need to have you don't need to manually enter those policies and make sure that the network is doing that. This intent-based network should be smart enough to actually do that stuff.
Is this sort of like the kind of thing where a company would want to do like load balancing on a network, depending on what, incoming versus outgoing traffic?
Sure,
things like
that's
that?
another use case. You could say, I want this type of traffic to be, have these
Prioritized.
policies to it. And in the past, that would have required like people sitting at computers and typing in command line interfaces to set up those policies. And so the basic idea of this is advanced orchestration, advanced policy creation, and basically having a computer do this stuff for you instead of having to do it yourself, which is a lot more unsecure because people make mistakes and computers don't make as many mistakes.
I feel bad for the poor people who used to do this.
Right.
Because another set of jobs.
But it could make their jobs a lot easier, and there's still going to be right. But there's still going to be jobs in terms of making sure the network can do these things and setting up the network connections and stuff like that. So, but it's still very early on in this market. But the reason why I want to talk about it now is because I think this is something you're going to hear a lot more about from not just Cisco, but other networking vendors and other enterprise vendors in general. And like I said, it's basically the idea of bringing machine learning to the networking realm. And you're seeing a lot of enterprise companies talk about how they're bringing machine learning to whatever they do, whether it's applications or networking or security, stuff like that.
So just to bring it down to my level.
Okay.
So on my phone, I have Google Assistant or Siri, and if I can say set an alarm for 8 o'clock, if I do that enough times and I forget one night, it'll say, "Do you want to set an alarm for 8 p.m.?" Is that kind of what this is for, like to catch, like if there's a security update that you didn't see or something that wasn't pushed to the right computer, like it'll say, "All right, this is supposed to be there."
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, infrastructure-wise, it would say infrastructure-wise, because the pattern of you setting that alarm all the time. So infrastructure-wise, it's just going to set your alarm.
Okay.
Security-wise, you can tell it to do one of two things: prompt you for the patch or apply and manage patches.
Okay.
And then you go a step further because it follows your policy. So apply and set patches, but only to this group.
Got it.
And now to this group, and now to this group, and now to this group. And it knows to do that automatically.
Okay.
Credit to Famita Rashid for giving me a really awesome primer on IBN
Hi, Famita.
and how it plays into security.
IBN is intent-based networking. Yep.
And the one thing I really liked about it, you actually kind of touched on, is the fact that as an administrator, I could set policies, and I no longer have to worry about some of the high-level stuff I'd normally have to do. So one of the tenets in security is I need to know who my users are. I need to know what you access, when, where, why, and how, and you. So now what I do is I use all these groups and these policies, and I have the IBN know that you can only do this, and you can only do this, and it constantly adjusts and monitors the network. So by doing that, I actually cut about maybe an hour or two of workload off of me per day, which means now I can get into incident response. Now I can get into proactive awareness training. Now I can get into provisioning new users or services.
Because what is the IBN doing that you would have had to be doing before?
It's
monitoring
all the lifting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's monitoring those policies. It's making sure those policies are enforced instead of having someone dedicated to doing that stuff and watching all that stuff. It's just done automatically now.
Would it change on its own if it learns, say, can has
Can
a
it
different...
become sentient, in other words?
Well, no, I mean, Siri and
want
Google
you to have
Assistant,
that.
like Google Assistant knows where I park my car without telling it,
Right.
like things like that. Like, will it kind of like learn patterns and say, okay, this has changed, so let me tweak this?
The hope is if you allow it to, yes.
Okay.
But as it stands now, no, because that's not part of what it's going. Correct me if I'm wrong. Cisco has IBN ready devices, but they're not pure play IBN, right?
It's very early on in this market. This is basically a vision statement by Cisco saying we want to roll out this technology in the future.
Your point, I would say, would be part of the grandiose long-term vision statement. As it is now, no.
I just wonder, too, if this would be something that would be useful in terms of alerting you that your network is under attack.
Yes.
It could see, like a DDoS attack or something like that. And
not only can it see it, it will actually
fight back on its own.
It won't fight back. Can't fight back.
Well, block it. Attempt to block
it
is
would
what
mitigate
I mean.
it.
Yeah,
And the mitigation would go around your basic set of policies, and then if that mitigation does not work, it can escalate for you. So then you bring your incident responders in, then you get notifications out to the SOC, then you get notifications out to your upstream providers and things like this. Or if it's easily mitigated, it does it right there at your firewall. It adjusts the network and the policies for you automatically, and it monitors continuously.
So Brandon, do we have any idea, how quickly or how long it's going to take before we start really seeing this in operation?
Well, there are some bits and pieces of intent-based networking that you can start to buy now. Like Steve mentioned, Cisco is starting to roll this out and making some of their equipment intent-based networking ready. I think over the next year, you're going to see a lot more talk from big vendors like Cisco about it. There's already a whole crop of startups that are sort of latching onto this market and trying to jump in front of Cisco and do this, at least on the networking side. But I think the bigger point here is that we're seeing machine learning come to the networking industry, and we're seeing machine learning just explode across the enterprise and really touching on all the different parts of the enterprise now. And so it's exciting to see, and it'll be exciting to see how it rolls out.
Yeah, we're going to have to do something on machine learning in the future.
I have a quick question for you, though. All right, so all of this is really positive that you've seen coming out. So from what you've learned and read now, where do you see the FUD? Where do you see the hype cycle going that's going to misrepresent what IBN really is?
Well, there is some intent-based washing out there right now. So companies are going to say, hey, I have this advanced automation that you can do on your network, and we're going to call it intent-based networking because it's sort of the buzzword du jour right now, especially in the networking industry. Right. So I think that has a chance of sort of creating some undereducated or some mismarketing out there. And then things are hyped up more than they should be. And then people don't get the value that they're actually getting out of it. And that's when
it could muddy the waters for sure. If you've got companies that are trying to get ahead of Cisco and they put something out there that they say is this technology, and then Cisco comes back and says no, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. I could see how that might slow things down a little bit. Depends on the companies. I would think this would put pressure on Cisco rivals to try to come up with something of their own.
Yeah, and we already are seeing that. Juniper has already come out and started to talk about this. We'll see if other companies like VMware and Arista and other companies like that, sort of how they respond to this, because Cisco really has planted the flag in the ground saying that this is going to be our strategy moving forward.
Okay, coming to a network near you soon. Okay, I want to shift gears. This is a story that I love. I've been wanting to talk about GPS spoofing for like a month and a half. GPS spoofing, in case you're not aware, is the ability to spoof GPS, which is, of course, what it sounds like. This came up, talk about FUD, after the recent naval accidents where the Navy ships were running into other cargo containers. And the question is, was the GPS being spoofed and they were being sent off course? And your short answer is no, but...
So the short and long tail of that is on August 21st, the USS John McCain collided with a merchant ship. It was horrible.
10 sailors died, right?
Yeah, 10 sailors died, unfortunately. Yeah. And this is not the, this is like 2 months after another incident in June, and there have been other incidents. Well, once that story broke and it started to circulate, you started seeing these, did Russia hack the ship? And, that's where the topic of GPS spoofing came from. Yeah. So what I told...
We were talking earlier about this.
Yeah, when he first brought this up to me, I told him, I said, just because it's got a computer and something bad happened doesn't mean it got hacked. That's not how that works. Which
is good.
You're not, the speculation isn't all that wrong, because there has been public research where somebody spoofed a GPS signal. And let's make it clear. There's a difference between jamming a GPS signal and spoofing a GPS. One disables you completely. The other makes you think you're, going down the highway when in reality you're still in your garage. So there's a huge difference, and it's not wrong because people have seen, I'm going to look up this guy's name real quick. Todd Humphreys at the University of Texas not too long ago did a thing on GPS spoofing to where he actually navigated a cruise ship by making he made the ship turn by spoofing GPS. And so people are like, oh, it's possible. Right. And Russia has been known to develop GPS jamming technologies. But there's a difference between the two of those. And there's a huge, huge difference, because the GPS signal that the naval fleet uses, the 7th Fleet in particular, to navigate the waters, is not the GPS you're going to see on a cruise ship, and it's not the GPS all of us have on our phones.
Right. Or in our cars.
Yeah, it's completely different. And when you look at Russia's technology that's been rumored, no proof that it's actually there, when you look at what they've got, notice that Russia had to jam the GPS signal when they were doing the little mock runs with the planes over the naval ship. Yeah. If it's true, they had to jam it. They could not spoof that ship. And that's because trying to spoof that kind of signal, there's other defenses to keep these ships on course. They don't rely on just GPS alone.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting, and of course projecting ahead a little bit, but when you talk about, and we talked about this earlier too, something like Tesla, and automatic driving, it's 10 years down the road, you're in your car, you're heading for work, it's driving you to work. And if there's some ability to spoof GPS, well, are you going to make it to work alive? But you had a good point that Tesla's aware of this.
Tesla is highly aware of that, and their automated, their auto driving packages and the technology they use to drive their cars autonomously are probably one of their most highly poked and prodded at, package software. I mean, they will not put our lives at risk by releasing something that some kid with an iPhone could be like, you're in a wall.
That's a bridge abut, but not a highway.
That's just not going to happen. They would not put us at risk at that. And I firmly believe, though, that kind of incident is something they're keenly aware of, and they're going to focus on, because that is a prime attack surface.
But I mean, it's not just Tesla. Every single car manufacturer and they're of varying levels of intelligence.
All of them are going to have to focus on it. Yeah, Tesla is just a big name that popped in the
No, I know, and they're one of the major ones that are pushing this with auto driving, self-driving, and with GPS. But it's scary how dependent we are these days on GPS. I just moved to a new house in a new state, and I've been there for about a month and a half, and I can't get anywhere without my phone because I didn't. You don't learn like you did, or I don't. I want to go to the supermarket. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Oh, I want to go to work. I can't even get here without my phone.
Years and years and years ago, probably before you two were born, we had to...
Wait, why do you look at me that way?
Because you and I are the oldest
ones
in this room.
All right. Go ahead.
The reality was, we didn't get to rely on GPS until later on, and the original GPS we have is like what Apple Maps was a few years back. Turn left here, but that's a wall. All right, I'm going anyway.
It's really only been maybe 10 years, really, since the iPhone. That really brought it to this mass scale.
Yeah, no,
Google Maps on the iPhone. Yeah.
What was it before the iPhone? Was it Garmin?
Garmin, TomTom. They had there was some, but they were niche. They were $150 devices. They
really
didn't do much.
They sat on like the sandbag and the thing. It was just a pain to carry.
Well, just getting back to these accidents that have happened in the Navy, I think that when those stories came out, I sort of had that initial reaction too. That it's like this pattern.
Well, because you don't expect it's twice in the same summer. These major high tech ships using various bands of networking and GPS coordinates and everything else to suddenly run afoul of like cargo
and you never hear about that, and then it happens twice.
So there's no evidence that there was any GPS spoofing or jamming?
Absolutely none.
Okay.
So would they say if there was?
Somebody would leak it at this, and these days we know at some point.
I believe that it would be leaked if there was something like that. But also, I think if they could prove, like in the earlier stories named Russia specifically, I think if there was proof against Russia, they would put that out there anyway, because that's the boogeyman of the week right now is Russia.
Yeah.
So do you think jamming would have been enough to cause something like that, or would it had to have been spoofing?
If spoofing would have been the thing, jamming would be immediately detected and things would have gone nuts. When you jam a ship's GPS signal, all GPS function goes away.
Right.
And if there's a lot of ships in a particular area, jamming one cuts them off from the others. So even if you didn't notice your ship was being jammed, these two would.
Yeah.
And on the UHF channel, they would be pinging you on the radio going, where did you go?
Right.
What are you doing?
We're not seeing you. Why are you coming at me?
Could you stop, please? And so that would have raised all kinds of red flags.
So this is just straight up human error?
Yeah.
Well, I did hear about one of them. There was the one that the container ship, it made an unexpected U-turn right before the accident. So, I mean, obviously these are extraordinarily unfortunate events.
Yeah. And the thing is, unless we get like some sort of recorded details or logs or something that could be examined, we'll never truly know what happened. I forget his name, but the commander of the 7th Fleet, I think, got relieved of duty.
He did, yeah.
After the
But I think the overall point here is that as GPS systems do become more integral to self-driving cars, this is going to have to be top of mind.
Well, the fact that they can be spoofed, even if they weren't spoofed, and apparently weren't spoofed in terms of these two naval accidents, the fact that we are so reliant on GPS and just technology in general, opens the door to potential problem down the road, which is what I thought was fascinating about this. Not so much, I didn't think the ships had been spoofed off course, but the fact that GPS spoofing, can be done, and it just raises some serious questions for down the road.
Yeah, and I think the bigger question is there a way to change GPS and make it more resilient in the future? And we won't know till that time.
Right. Okay. And then finally, another favorite topic of mine, the upcoming iPhone. We just found out today, Apple finally confirmed that, yes, September the 12th, the day after my birthday, by the way, in case anyone's thinking of a birthday present.
What
day
should we
after my
get, Ken?
birthday. Yeah, what could he want?
It's at the Steve Jobs Theater, which is a big deal.
Is that the one in the new campus?
That's the new campus, yeah.
The campus will be open by then?
I mean, I don't know if it's be open for employees,
theater
but
will be.
At least there'll be a bunch of journalists there. Yeah, it's the theater's on like a separate area. It's like a walkway, trees.
I've been following this guy on YouTube. It takes all these drone videos.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah,
fascinating stuff.
The thing is bigger than the Pentagon. It's massive.
It's huge. It's huge. So the question is, and this is something that's been bubbling up. There's been a lot of discussion, debate, concern trolling about the price of the new top-end iPhone 8 or whatever it's going to be called, finally breaking the $1,000 barrier, and whether that's a big deal.
I thought it was $999. That seems like a deal.
Look, for this thing, I think it was $949 or $969 a year ago. What's the difference? 50
So
bucks?
how much? Yeah,
I'm shocked.
It's only a little bit
you
more.
think I'm not going to be getting a new iPhone this year because it's $50 more? Sorry, Alex. I'm
well,
getting a new
Apple
iPhone.
could stamp their logo
Assuming
on a
that's
brick.
that's a 256 gigabyte,
Correct.
5.5-inch screen. The new one will be 64 gigabytes and 4.7-inch screen. We're talking about 5.2
5.8
1 or something, or 5 point. It's a little bit smaller.
Right.
So, you're trading off. It's not an apples to apples, no pun intended, comparison.
Oh, go for it. So do we think that the fact that that smartphone prices are going into 4 digits now, does that surprise anyone? It doesn't surprise me. I mean, this is
When I got my first iPhone, which was 2G,
yeah,
which had
what was it, $599? It was
worst
considered
camera in the world.
shockingly,
Yeah.
horribly
I
high.
had just gotten married in May.
Okay.
And I went to the Apple store and I checked it out and I said, wow, this is great. I want one. And my wife said, well, I want one too. So we bought 2.
Okay.
So I spent $1,400 that day at the Apple store.
Gladly. You handed over
happily.
the
And
money.
I loved it and I haven't changed it since. And at the time, I was blown away by it. It was, a full screen, a touch screen, a camera. It wasn't a good camera at the time, but it was a camera, it was on the full screen. It had GPS. I could do maps. I could do a full internet browser. I could do email. And it was all in this little package that was gorgeous. It didn't have the keyboard that I hated.
Yeah.
And people say, wow,
just
$600,
worked.
that's crazy. Sure, it's a lot of money. But we're talking about
An amazing
cutting edge
technology.
technology.
Yeah.
If you don't want it, there are so many phones out there. Apple's going to have options.
Yeah.
They're going to have an iPhone 7 and 7S, which will be normally priced. Normally being $800 something dollars.
Well,
still
again,
a lot.
but when you spread that out, because you're buying phones now on the installment plan.
That's how.
It's $40 a month
yeah.
for like 5 years.
I think that's a big part of why. Samsung just released a Note. That's $930. That's $100 more than the Note.
Didn't you tell me
7.
that only has 64 gigs
64
of storage?
gigs of storage.
Which
it
I'm
does.
sorry, I think that's pretty stingy
That's
for a $930 phone.
But there's an SD slot, and you can expand it up to 256 gigs if you want for $120 or whatever it is. People have those lying around all over the place. Anyway, I think that these installment plans have allowed these companies to kind of tweak the prices up just
That's
a little
another
bit.
few dollars a month.
Yeah, I'm paying $40 a month for the iPhone 7. So it's $43 a month for the iPhone.
Such a
8.
deal.
Right.
You got to remember too, though, there is a part of the population that, like, literally, Apple could stamp their logo onto a brick, call it the iBrick, and sell it, and people will buy it.
I would not buy an iBrick.
I'd buy an iBrick just to hit somebody with an iBrick.
Well, it'd have
then
to
I
have
could
some
say,
special
I bricked
function.
you,
But,
and
you
just-
know.
I mean,
Smash into them.
that is true, and there are those people, but Apple sells 50 million iPhones a quarter. I mean, we're not
Exactly.
talking about
No.
a small little.
These aren't fanboys,
niche, yeah.
fangirls. No.
I mean,
These
that's
are
such a
users,
small
yeah.
portion of Apple right now. And I think the if they come out with a $999 iPhone 8, there will be some sticker shock, and some people won't buy it.
Good. That
what
means there's
does
more
the-
for me to order.
But what is the new iPhone going to do that? Let's say I wanted to go out and
Okay.
just give up my love of Android right now and go buy one. Why should I wait and get this one versus what I have now that might even be cheap, or what I can get now that's even cheaper?
I mean, it depends. If you're comparing it to a new Samsung product, the Note 8 or the Galaxy S8, honestly, they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
You know, the Note 8 has a great chip, has 64 gigs of storage, which is what the iPhone is rumored to start at, has a amazing OLED screen, all that stuff. Apple hasn't had OLED because its scale is so massive. It needs to produce. They sell more in a quarter than Samsung sells Notes in a year.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so much, because they have to pay more for the production of the screens. They get the screens from wherever they're getting from, LG or whoever's supplying them. So that ups the price. Then we're talking about engineering. If it's a full screen, if we're talking about a full edge-to-edge screen, we haven't seen that yet in a phone.
Yeah.
The Element phone, the Essential phone, which just came out, has a little strip on the bottom, and there's a couple other ones. The Note has two little strips. If we're edge-to-edge glass, that's a pretty big innovation that we haven't seen yet. So there's engineering, there's marketing, and I think they're going to honestly up the price, as Ken said, so there's more for the people who really want one, and so people don't rush out to buy it.
Yeah.
I think Apple does price their new technology in a way to say, all right, this is for a certain subset of user, and this is for the other subset of user. And in a year, it'll be $899, and then a year later, it'll be $799, and everybody will
But
have
by
one.
then, we will have all moved on to whatever the iPhone 9 or iPhone
right.
10 or whatever delivers, and I'll still be up at 3 in the morning on whatever Friday it is that Tim Cook designates that we have to get up and
What's
order.
interesting about the iPhone 8 or the iPhone Pro, whatever they're going to call it, is this is the first time Apple has done this where they've really delineated two products.
They're splitting it out.
Yeah. They always offer the old one for less,
Mhm.
but now they're going to have a 7S, rumored, a 7 and a 7S plus.
7S and a 7S
7S,
Plus,
a 7S
and an 8.
Plus, and an 8. And they're completely different.
Yeah.
The 7S looks like a 7, and it has probably an A11 chip, and it has a better camera and, things like this. But the 8 will be, you're going to look at it in a store and say, wow, I want that. And, I'm interested to see, is it going to turn people off to the iPhone 7S? Are people going to say, well, I'm not paying for that, but I don't want that one either, so maybe I will look at Samsung? I don't know.
I don't know that people make the jump, really. I mean, if Apple hasn't wooed you by now,
No.
the
The only
new
reason
one's
I
not
went,
going to.
the only reason I went with Android is because I physically love having control over my
Sure.
phones.
Yeah.
So.
Which I understand, and I wish actually I had more control over the the phone. All right, so show of hands, who's going to be up at 3 in the morning ordering a new iPhone in a couple of weeks?
Come on,
so it's
you're going
it's
to.
a split decision 2-2. All right, great. Well, so I think we're going to leave it there. We'll find out more about the iPhone 8 in a few weeks. Brandon, thanks for the detailed discussions
No
of
problem.
networking, intent-based and otherwise. Steve, thanks for being here.
Thanks
Lots
for
of
having me
security
out.
talk and GPS spoofing. For now, you know what we know.